is basically a volunteer-led group of dog trainers at Team Animal Care Center, whose focus is, we say on the slide, dogs in need of behavioral support. Another way to put our focus is improving the adoptability of dogs whose behaviors are impeding their adoptability, okay? How we do it, we provide training, assistance, and support to PACC volunteers, fosters, and adopters. And we'll talk about that, how we do that in a minute. Is that the one? Okay. How did we start? There's a picture of Sarah, our hostess, right there. So late 2017, two of us, another gentleman and myself, talked a lot about creating a group where we could train more volunteers how to be more effective at improving the adoptability of some of our behaviorally challenged dogs. And what our specific focus was we thought we could increase the use of positive reinforcement training in the shelter environment to the benefit of dogs whose behavior was impeding their adoptability. We talked about that. We started creating some stuff, got a class going that we'll talk about in a minute. But then in 2018, the picture of Sarah there, PACC had a meeting where PACC leadership wanted to identify and secure volunteer support for the most at-risk animals. And they were saying, let's identify, and Sarah, you can clarify it since you were part of staff. They were saying, let's identify formal groups, volunteer groups at PACC that we can support in whatever means possible. 3 project groups were formed as a result of that. Top Dogs was one of them. Mature Mutts, something supporting specifically our older dogs, and then Mission Possible, a support group for cats. Our leadership committee I just mentioned is 4 of us. Oh, what? Oh,
okay. So we have 4 members of the leadership committee, which you've already met, and there's a picture of the 4 of us in front of our beautiful art installation in front of our new building that was put up in 2017. We have 4 of us. You've met us already, and then we do the planning, we do the teaching. We have all these great different ideas, and you'll hear more about them. We are funded by a group called Friends of PACC. Friends of PACC is the philanthropic wing of Pima Animal Care Center. They are not connected to the county, so any funds that are raised can be used at the discretion of the board of Friends of PACC, as well as consulting with our leadership team. So they manage all funding and purchasing of all the equipment that we use. We use special harnesses. We give out brochures and books to the people that we help train. We have logos printed on wonderful t-shirts. Unfortunately, none of us are wearing them today, but they're for sale. And they have set up standards of practice. So Friends of PACC has been a great boom for the volunteers and for doing a lot of our different projects. I'm done. Oh, there's one of our Top Dog hats that Friends of PACC also provides for us.
Yeah.
Gail.
You want me to keep going?
About why we gave
I can't hear what you're saying, so somebody else pick it up.
Okay, so here's a list of the programs that we have instituted over the past 2 to 3 years, and a cute picture of midnight. So our major program was Canine Fun Camp, and all of the rest of these programs pretty much came out of that and trying to address the different needs that came up. We have volunteer training appointments, movie nights, clicker clinic, and we'll go into all the programs in depth right now. The most important program we started was Canine Fun Camp, and that's an 8-week training class for volunteers where we use positive reinforcement methods. We work on basic behavior, life skills, and we use agility training in order to provide enrichment and fun for the dogs. Our volunteers did early on very much embrace the concept, and we work with them so that they record all the progress that their dogs make in our note-taking system for our adoption counselors. So the focus of the class is really to provide skills for the volunteers, but also we want to make sure that the dogs we're working with, we're working on the skills that will make them more adoptable. Out of Canine Fun Camp came what we called Canine Training Camp, because Canine Fun Camp is 8 weeks. It's a big commitment for our volunteers. So our trained CFC volunteers participate in what we call Canine Training Camp, CTC. They use the skills they learned in CFC. They record their progress in the same way, and then they train dogs outside of the camp atmosphere. In other words, on their daily visits to the kennel. So again, progress, we ask that they record their progress so that their notes in our note keeping system for our adoption counselors. And the volunteers are focusing on the skills, again, that are going to make that individual dog more adoptable. From that, we had a lot of volunteers that participated in CFC multiple times with partners. And so we invited them right before COVID hit to attend our first CFC Master Class. So we upped the training skills provided. We taught higher level skills, and we worked a lot on assessment. So they were spending more time observing and assessing their dogs because they're higher level behavior dogs. This is our favorite, drop-in clinic. I'm not sure how it came about, but drop-in clinic we hold once a week for our volunteers during dog walking hours. The interesting thing about drop-in clinic was we were going to use this clinic in order to reach out and touch base with our volunteers in a more direct way. Initially, although we had a lot of people interested in the CFC, there were a lot of people that weren't interested in training. So we thought if we could interact on a more frequent basis with the volunteers, that we actually might get more interest. The fun part of the drop-in clinic is the first year was watching volunteers avoid us in the park behind the shelter. I mean, they were doing huge circles around us. Then somebody had the bright idea, I think it was Maggie, to bring out agility equipment. And boy, did that get attention. Yeah, eye candy. So Maggie brought out some agility equipment, a jump, and then some weave poles, and people began to stop. And each week, we basically teach a basic handling skill. Pretty easy, sit down, look. But we use the agility equipment in order to wrestle them in, because everybody likes to get their dog over the jump. And as a result of this, volunteers have begun to interact with the training group on a much more frequent basis. And we can see the dogs each week and assess their behavior, and also maybe get a harness on them if they need it. So we love drop-in clinic. Self-starter was just for our people that didn't have the time commitment to CFC or training camp, but they were long-term experienced volunteers. So they're following the same camp protocols, but they don't attend camp. They just record their experiences. So it gave an opportunity for people who couldn't commit to 8 or a 4-week class for whatever reason. The next program, I believe staff came to us for, didn't they? Safety seminars. They wanted to improve safety amongst volunteers and also with staff. So safety seminars were created to hit the topics where they felt more in-depth behavioral theory and training options needed to be offered to both volunteers and staff. At the beginning of each safety seminar, we review canine body language. because that's the most important element. And then we went on to different topics, and I'll give you a few examples here. We had overstimulation and frustration intolerance, resource guarding, fearfulness, reactivity. We did a whole session on body language. And then for our longer term volunteers, we did a session on accurate recording of canine behavior, so that we were making good observations and not just, oh, what a sweet dog, he's so cute and he kisses you. So, oh, and canine matchmaking for our adoption counselors who were learning the dogs and their actual behaviors, so they can match them better to the actual adoptions or people coming in for adoptions. Okay, so out of COVID came a very interesting thing for us at PACC. Sarah probably remembers this. We pushed, as soon as lockdown came, we pushed as many dogs as possible out to foster. And that was actually a good thing. A lot of people were at home, but it also found that we had fosters that weren't quite as savvy as some of our other ones. So there was a need for training sessions. So 1-hour training sessions for fosters and then eventually adopters. The program was created to meet that need. We get referrals from our pet support group, from our intake group. We now get referrals from volunteers and our foster and adoption staff. And we have a dedicated helpline where they contact us and outline their behavior problem. We offer them a 1-hour session, and Gail provides all kinds of written articles to get them started before they come. So we're all speaking the same language. And then most importantly, because it's only a 1-hour session, it gives us time to, as the trainers, to assess the dog and the experience level of the fosters or adopters. But we're not training the dog, we're training the owners. And in most cases, 1 hour is really sufficient. But we also offer follow-up appointments for our reactive dogs or dogs with a little bit more complicated problems. It's been a real interesting experience, and it's been a great learning experience for us. I'll let you do that, Maggie.
So I just wanted to bring up that an unexpected side effect, in my opinion, of these foster and adopter training sessions. This is something that I think really got staff buy-in of our program, because previously they were receiving all these calls. Our foster office would receive all these calls. I'm having problems with my foster. The admissions intake office would receive, adopted this dog, it is not working out, give me an appointment to bring him back. So staff who didn't previously know what we were doing suddenly found out what we could do for PACC dogs to keep them out of the shelter, to keep them in a home or in a placement. And now they're one of our biggest sources of referrals. So we didn't really anticipate that happening, but it ended up being a great, great result.
Add a little bit to this also. I think that this helpline email that we set up that has kept so many dogs in placements is one of the best things that for our learning experience that we've been able to do. And it's gotten the volunteers, when we adopt dogs out, it's easier to set up a placement for a dog if you have a safety net, if you have something on the other end that says, if this doesn't work out, so that 2 or 3% that you're adopting out that isn't going to work, there's a place for them to go. And that's what we've been for the shelter, is part of that safety net, along with the community support, Um, we're there to help keep these animals in their placement.
It's been great for us too. Our assessment skills have really been honed. And it's always interesting to read the email and then see the dog. Because a lot of times you're expecting this, I'm gonna kill you. And it's a little chihuahua and he barks. So it's been really a lot of fun for us, and it's been a great learning experience for us as well. An offset to drop-in clinics, and perhaps a little bit from our foster and adopter appointments, is that I'd say in the past 3 months, volunteers have started contacting us to assess long stay dogs to see how they can help them in the shelter. What training do they need? A lot, and I'm sure a lot of other shelters are the same way. You have your favorite and you walk him at 3 days a week, and you want to improve his chances for getting adopted. So we started providing the same 1-hour session to the volunteers, and then coming up with a training plan for that dog, and then follow up using mainly message groups or face-to-face conversations when we run into them. But we've had really great results, and a couple of, I'd say several of our really long stay dogs got out because volunteers stepped up and did the training work for them. So that's been fun. One of the other great things that we did was to try to provide training, but not in such a rigid atmosphere. So we purchased some training seminars that Patricia McConnell has on DVD, and we set up our NPR room with really low comfy couches. So everybody had to like fall into them and couldn't get out. And then you have to find a way to keep these people in. And we fed them too, didn't we? We fed them, and we brought the sweetest dog we could find that would give them kisses to greet them. And we'd set up each seminar with a little bit of setup before, and then we'd answer questions after. And we did movie nights like on Friday night, and there are a lot of other pathetic people out there like us who don't have Friday night plans. So it was a lot of fun until the pandemic. Yeah. What we did just start at the beginning, I guess, of January, when we were allowed to have some outdoor training. I will say some of these programs, and many of these programs, did have to stop with COVID just because of the distance issues. But we did set up a clicker clinic outside for 4 weeks. So it's shorter than Canine Fun Camp. And it teaches clicker skills, which are pretty essential for most shelter dogs. And volunteers came for 4 weeks, chose a dog, worked with them, and did the same thing. We assessed the dogs, they chose the skills they needed to work on, and then we taught them the clicker skills in order to attain. Probably they know it, but the clicker reaches a different part of the brain. And so in a shelter environment with all the noise, you are fighting distractions all the time. And so many of our, what we call our bad boys who don't seem to focus, actually really work hard for the clicker. And it's amazing to see. And what we've seen on all of these classes is that people choose dogs and they never expect the final outcome that some dedicated, consistent training can bring about. And so Clicker Clinic was very much the same way. We had some really unfocused dogs, and we practiced sit on the dog before and after sometimes, but we got these dogs to focus. And the best result was that the volunteers bought in and now can use their skills with every dog that they walk at the shelter. So again, the focus was identifying the skills that particular dog needed in order to get out of the shelter. Kennel routine, I'll go through this quick. I'm sure anybody that's working in a large shelter knows how hectic the morning dog walking and evening dog walking sessions can be. So we designed and used, probably off Dogs Playing for Life, their kennel routine. We teach it to mainly new volunteers in basically 10 minutes, and then we spend the balance of the session out in the shelter practicing it. So they pick the dog that they can't get out without him jumping on them, and then we show them using kennel routine how they can do that. And having that consistent kennel routine makes a difference in the stress level of that dog.
I just wanted to add one more point on kennel routine, and Gail or Lynn or Jan here can change, but how we focus what we're going to work on, this one reminds me, it's about how does the dog look to a potential adopter. So a dog who constantly jumping at the front of the kennel is rewarding. That's how I get out. I jump at the front of the kennel, the door opens, my person walks me out. They don't present well to potential adopters walking up and down the aisle, okay? We want to help the dog learn that 4 feet on the floor in the presence of someone is more rewarding behavior than lunging at the kennel door. The people who are walking down that hallway, you see the big dog lunging at the kennel door and you may just pass them by. The feeling is, I don't necessarily want that in my house, right? So we want to try to help our dogs learn that 4 feet on the floor, even better, you know, a sit is highly rewarding. So they offer that more when people are in front of their kennel. Again, everything is focused at improving the dog's adoptability.
I want to add one thing about kennel routine. One of the things that Fran said, that kennel routine is usually taught to newer volunteers. And what has happened is the older volunteers who are struggling to get their dogs out and fighting the dogs are watching these newbies who come in, do the kennel routine, take the dogs out, no problem. And all of a sudden they're interested. Well, what did you do? How did you learn this? So by teaching the newbies, the old guard now is interested in learning this new routine.
Okay, another recent development was we also have a focus group at PACC for bonded pairs called PACC Pals. And bonded pairs is not really as straightforward as it seems. So they turned to us to provide evaluations on what they felt were potentially bonded pairs, but were having a hard time making the determination. And they provided us with a very well-researched written assessment protocol. And so we provide the evaluation, we video the portions that are relevant and share them with the members that are not present, and then write up our documentation for the record for our adoption counselors. The interesting thing is these two adorable dogs in this picture are not bonded. So it's not straightforward. And I know it's an issue in a lot of shelters. These two dogs came in together and slept together, but were not in any way bonded. So that's why we put that picture in there. All right, I'm going to turn over to Lynn now.
So I want to talk a little bit about the way that the whole program has advanced. It seems like each new program that we add came out of a need for being able to provide something else or something the same in a different environment or a different setting. We do have the opportunity to partner with a human-animal connection and get more involved with getting active duty military and veterans to sign up, become volunteers, and learn to train dogs. And our portion of it is teaching them to train their dog. And the human-animal connection is run by a wonderful PhD counselor who her portion of this will be teaching the service people how to understand stress and PTSD in themselves by learning to see it in the dogs and learning to what they could do to help the dogs through it. So this is going to be a really interesting program for us to get involved with, and it's going to add a lot of volunteers. We offer a lot of services. We have we call this our toolbox. We provide equipment, harnesses. We have a special harness that we really like. Muzzles, chain leashes, collars, halties, thunder shirts, calming caps, doggles, which are goggles for dogs, and so much more. All of this is funded by Top Dogs through our Friends of PACC, and they help us find the best prices and the best for purchasing. We also assist with some very special needs dogs. Right here, you can see Gail working with a deaf dog. We've also worked with some blind dogs for training, and Gail's really spearheaded the research on this. Positive reinforcement training, it's just in a different way to communicate it to the dog. They're just, it's amazing to see how well these dogs can learn, and how much it means for them to have more control over their environment, because they understand the behaviors and what that will get them. We've done some BAT training. We were trained by a BAT certified trainer, and we had 2 sessions with her to learn the process and protocols for BAT training. And then we've done a couple of BAT training sessions for dogs that were so reactive that they didn't have a threshold at all. It was anything in their vision, anything in their hearing, anything they could smell. They were just so reactive. It was incredible. And this is something that it's when we have to dig really deep to help a dog that has really tough battle with reactivity.
Hey, Lynn, can you real quick explain what BAT training is?
Sure. BAT training is desensitization and counter conditioning, but I think the identifying factor is that the dog determines the threshold. So it's not the trainer determining threshold, that we use very, very long lines. What we try to do is keep the dog, to make sure that the dog doesn't feel tethered. We let the dog explore. We set up a training course so that the dog is required to use their sense of smell more than hearing, more than vision. We're trying to get them back into perceiving their environment through their sense of smell. Reactive dogs often are much too reliant on vision and hearing, and we can reduce some of that reactivity just by having them sniff, which is a calming activity. We also provide an online training library, which Gail sends out to everyone who emails us and asks for help. She'll find the right article for their problem. We have a hard copy of our training library in the volunteer room at PACC, and we also provide a subscription to Whole Dog Journal to our volunteers. We use booklets from Patricia McConnell and Turid Regis for our training sessions, including, we have books that are written about separation anxiety, isolation distress, containment phobia, fear-based reactivity, and crate training is all included in Patricia McConnell's books. We have the barking book from Turid, which is incredible encyclopedia of barking. And we also use her calming signals book to teach our volunteers, but mostly the adopters and fosters, how to read their dogs, how to read the body language on their dog. We've Jan does a lot of writing for us, providing articles for the Friends of PACC newsletter in print. And we've done a lot of research and provided in-depth training and behavior information relevant to the shelter dogs on our Top Dogs Facebook page, which Jan takes very good care of. We have a YouTube channel where we've posted training videos for basic training. We don't need to see dogs that just need a few basics. If the people that are handling them, like some of our more experienced fosters, just need a little bit of backup with the training skills, or we can use this to supplement a session somewhere where they can go to see it again. And we also show people how to fit their 3-in-1 harnesses, because when they go home and unclip the clips, it can look like a pile of spaghetti. So we send them with that information also, so that they can go on YouTube and watch how to refit that harness to their dog. We have, again, the Facebook page. We post our training sessions with the dogs that we see, so that everyone can benefit from the problems that that owner or that foster had with the dog. And you can see what the plan is for them to go home to remediate the problems or to manage the problems. We also do training tips. Jan's great at keeping those training tips, some amazing training tips posted on our Facebook page. She also does QR codes when we have dogs that have really bad kennel presence, and they need out of the shelter. We can take them out into the park and video what this dog is like outside of the shelter setting. So anyone walking by can look at the little sign on their kennel that says "Scan me," and they can see the video. This is what this dog is like outside of this kennel. So don't let this dog fool you. This could be a good dog for your home. So we've, so since we've been teaching CFC, our Canine Fun Camp, we've actually trained 43 volunteers, and we've had 66 dogs trained in those sessions. The CTC, we had 17 volunteers participating. So that's doing the one-on-one every day until that dog's out of the shelter. They're working with that dog. And we had 37 dogs that went through that program and were adopted out. Safety seminars, we've had 70 plus people attending our safety seminars, and including staff, not just volunteers, but staff also. Many of our program grads have gone on to join other groups, the urgent dog and STR dog groups that concentrate on getting dogs out to rescues when they're not suitable to go to a regular adoptable home. Those specialized groups, we've had some people go to the clinic also. So they get interested and they get stuck. This photo of Gail and her buddy here in the trunk of the car. We are seeing some interesting trends and trying to keep track of this, especially with the dogs that are coming back. The first, in 2020, 48% of the dogs that we saw on our helpline were coming to us because of fear reactivity problems. That's increased. And what we started noticing was a lot of these dogs left our shelter as green dot and blue dot dogs with, that could walk comfortably in a public setting with no reactivity. But once they go into a home, they develop reactivity. And I think we're starting to see some trends there. So we're going to try to see if we can figure out what's happening between the shelter and the new home that's creating this reactivity in the dogs. Probably too much new too quick. That would be my first guess. But we'll take a look at that. Let's see. Separation anxiety is another big one. People have been staying at home all year, and when dogs get used to a routine, and when you decide that you want to go back to work, the dog objects. So we're seeing a lot more separation anxiety lately also. Requests from other shelters. We've had 2 other shelters in Arizona ask us if we can come and talk to them about maybe helping create this program for their shelters. And once COVID's over with, we might be able to do that. We are in constant development of our Top Dogs Procedures book. That this is something that is really a lot harder to stay on top of, because our procedures change as we need them to change, and that can be daily sometimes. Okay, and did we make it through?
Well, Maggie's got.
So before we take all the questions, I had one last point I wanted to make about Top Dogs as a whole, and then Gail, maybe you do. We can gesture to each other here in this room, but the point I wanted to make was Top Dogs is an example of, if just 1 or 2 volunteers if you have a good idea of something, or you think it might be a good idea of something that could help your shelter dogs, don't be afraid to take it and make it happen. This started out as just me and one other person talking to each other, we're not really seeing this. We're not really seeing positive reinforcement training being brought to the volunteers and then being used to improve our dogs' adaptability. Could we make this happen? And initially we formulated something in our minds, and we went to our volunteer coordinator, who said, sounds good to me, let's get a staff, on board. Went to our head of our behavior department, and she said, basically, I'm not interested. Been there, seen that, and nobody keeps going with it. And she said, they always start these with good intentions, and then everybody craps out, and I really am not interested in this. So our point with her was, well, then it's no downside for you, since we're taking it all on ourselves, the equipment, creating the programs, inviting the volunteers, conducting the programs. Where's the downside? And they were like, fine, do whatever you want. And it worked, and it's growing, and we're seeing positive reactions, positive outcomes for our PACC dogs. So I would just encourage anybody out there, if you see something, a way that you think you can help your shelter dogs become more adaptable or make their lives better, don't hesitate to try to make it happen. Even in the face of maybe staff members saying, been there, done that, it's not going to work, but do whatever you want. That was my only point.
I'm going to make a comment about what Maggie said about behavior team and staff. They have now been converted. They come to us for help. They come to us for ideas. We give them ideas that they like. And so it took a while. It took that 1 year when that people were running away from us, that we used to have to grab them and say, hey, let me show you how to walk this dog, because he's pulling you around the park. And it worked. I mean, and we now have the head of behavior team asking us for help. So it just was a lot of pushing and pushing and pushing. So Maggie's right. Don't be afraid to push, and don't be afraid to corral people into trying something new. People are afraid of new things, but this new thing really has changed the shelter.
Thank you all so much. I'm so impressed just to hear how much things have changed in the last year and a half, and how much good you're doing. I think that last point was really important. Can you talk, I'm not sure which of you is most appropriate, but can you talk a little bit to that initial sort of development? I know in PEMA, you had some leadership support in creating a focus group and kind of narrowing in on a particular audience of dogs. But if somebody wanted to start a program like this in their shelter and start it from like the volunteer standpoint, where do they even start? Do they just start working with a dog that they're walking? Do they get a group of friends together, much the way that the four of you have come together to fill this need? Like, what would you recommend for them?
So Sarah, I'll take this initially and then others can jump in just because I was there at the very beginning. One thing, how it happened, it just needs to be a couple, 1, 2, whatever, very interested people. I mean, if the goal is always, saving lives and making adoptions, appropriate adoptions happen, what I would encourage people to do is first look for another interested, maybe a soulmate, a co-conspirator, if you will, and then make sure to do some research, make sure you have, what am I going to say, science-based or reliable theories to work from. We didn't just go making things up. We relied a lot on, Larry and I did on our past investigation into positive reinforcement training, clicker work that's been done. Other people have gone before us, like Dr. Ian Dunbar, Sophia Yin, Pat Miller, Patricia McConnell, Tura Rugas, Karen Pryor. So make sure you seek out, there's all kinds of resources out there to help you start something, put something together. Another thing we needed to try to figure out was how to convey to our volunteers that, you're training dogs anyway. What you'll get, we can all attest to this, what you get initially is a lot of response of, I don't have time for this. We have 150 dogs to walk this morning, and we only have 4 walkers. And so I don't have time to do all this training mumbo jumbo. Well, what we tried to help communicate was whenever you're interacting with a dog, you are training anyway. Okay. Training is the dog exhibits a behavior. There's a response to that behavior. It's either rewarding or it's not rewarding. If the behavior ends up having a rewarding outcome, the behavior will be repeated, right? So we tried to share with volunteers, this isn't in addition to your walking with your dogs. This is, while you're interacting with your dogs anyway. It's a way to make their life better, make sure they see that these good, more adoptable behaviors are rewarding, so they choose them more often. And then find at least one supportive staff member. That was important for us. And our volunteer coordinator, Gina Hansen, was that person who was open to listening to something new, open to kind of being our conduit, because you are on the shelter's property, talking to other volunteers. You have to operate within the shelter protocols. So I think if it's just you, get those resources out there that are science-based in the canine training world, and get a staff member to back you and kind of be in your corner. Then reach out to people like us who can say, hey, this is a program, here's how you would implement it, here's another one. People don't need to recreate the wheel. We did a lot of creating the wheel with ours, actually. This was a lot of from the grounds up. We're happy to share what we've done. Did that answer the question? I'll give it back to others.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I encourage anybody, any viewers, go ahead and drop any questions you have in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. Gosh, there's just so much stuff that you guys are doing. I don't even know what to ask you about.
I want to say one thing, Sarah. We didn't start it all at once like this. It built. I mean, we started with Canine Fun Camp, and then we added Canine Training Camp. So it wasn't, all of these programs did not happen at one time. So I don't want anybody to think that, because that would make it overwhelming.
That's a really great point. Which of all the programs do you think has been the most impactful?
I would say the most impactful of the programs is going to be the helpline. The Top Dogs Help at gmail.com is printed on everything. And so anybody can contact us on email and say, hey, I have a problem, and what can you do to help me here? Okay.
And then as far as the which of the hands-on, I hope we're not making people dizzy by moving the camera back and forth. Sorry. As far as the hands-on training programs, I would anticipate in the future, and this is just me, that Clicker Clinic may end up having a really big, long-term, broader impact for a couple of reasons. Canine Fun Camp we had set up to run what, initially 8 weeks, and then moved it down to initially 12 weeks, twice a week. So then we shortened it down, finding people are busy. People are all busy. Clicker Clinic, we decided, okay, we want to bring the skills of clicker training to shelter volunteers because there is so much data out there showing in our own experience, clicker training is particularly useful, particularly effective communication with shelter dogs, with overstimulated, got all this stimulation coming at them, shelter dogs. Also, we run it short, 4 weeks, 1 hour a week, 4 Saturdays, boom, boom, boom. And because it's highly effective, I think people are going to see what you can do. We already had a graduate of the first Clicker Clinic send us back a video of some amazing training she did with her dog that she said she never would have thought possible before. We have some longtime volunteers coming up now, signing up in the current one and being amazed. We had one demo day, the first session, and being surprised at how a dog would react in the first 20 minutes, learn a skill just because that clicker connects so deeply, so simply and so clearly. So from the hands-on training part, I would anticipate Clicker Clinic becoming growing and becoming more useful. And then always the drop-in clinic, because that basically was, okay, if they're not come to us, we're going to go to them. It was, everybody says they're too busy. They don't want to commit to one more thing. We're going to put ourselves out where they are. And then they saw things work. For example, we talked about harnesses. We started putting front clip harnesses on certain dogs, and suddenly somebody who walked the dog the day before would see one of us walking the dog suddenly not pulling. And they'd be like, what did you do? I said, well, you just put this front clip harness, blah, 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 blah. And suddenly they were seeing little things that work. So I would anticipate from the hands-on, Clicker Clinic and drop-in clinic as continuing, growing, etc. Yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, yeah, I think that drop-in clinic is a great quick tool. When people say, well, I just don't have time. And I say, give me 5 minutes. And we turn the timer on and I teach that person how to teach a dog to sit. And in 4 minutes, we're done. And I said, okay, now you can teach every dog in the shelter how to sit in 4 minutes. I said, it's not going to be a complete sit, but you now know what you need to do. I said, I didn't teach the dog that. I taught you that. And that's what captures people. Like Jan said, it's quick. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. And once people see that they can incorporate that into their walking sessions, they're really excited about it. And sometimes you see some of these long-term people who've been here for 8 and 9 years walking dogs who still take a large circle away from us. Every once in a while, you'll catch them out in the airfield with their dog, teaching their dog to sit. They don't want anybody to see them do that, but they're actually doing training on the slide because they see that it works. So we are reaching a lot of people. And I think between Clicker Clinic, like Maggie said, and drop-in clinic, we're reaching a lot of people for short episodes. And they really like it when they see the outcome.
Yeah, and to that point, is if you train a volunteer, then they're going to reach every single dog that they interact with in their 2 or 3 days every week. So we learned very quickly, if you train the volunteers, your impact is much greater because they are each walking between 7 to 10 dogs a day. So, yeah.
Sorry, I keep having these things occur to me. Gail's point of, we'll have long timers go off and like adopt our techniques out of sight. We try to make really sure that we offer things to people. We don't show up and say, hey, let me show you how to do that right? None of us want to, I've been working with shelter dogs for over 40 years. These people have been training dogs, all our lives, a lot of these people. So it is really careful. It is really important if someone's out there thinking, I want to start this kind of a program, you have to offer things. You have to walk the walk and let them see the kind of results you're having with, say, a difficult dog, with a dog they have experience with, and say, oh, well, this is another way to try it. Would you want to try this? Or if they come to you, well, how did you get Spot to not lunge at you like this? Is, oh, I just used this front clip harness. So that is one thing we've really had to be careful about is offer, demonstrate, lead by example, because nobody wants you to come up and say, hey, let me show you how to do that right. Okay.
We're good.
Woo,
Any more
you
questions?
guys are so full of information. I love it. I'm so excited. So if folks on this call have questions, they can email your helpline email address that's up on the screen right now.
Yes. Yes. Mhm.
Do you have a place online where all your resources are sort of stashed? Like, I know your foster program has like an internal web page that houses everything you might ever want to know about foster, and they often share that out to other organizations. I'm wondering if you have something similar.
No.
Okay. Well, then
That's a great idea.
I,
Okay, Jan, here's another project for you.
Yeah, there we go.
Rachel Jones can help you.
Yeah. No, it's not a bad idea for sure.
Okay, well, but you do have some documents that you'd be willing to share if people, reach out to you about specific things, and
Yeah,
awesome.
definitely. Yeah, because there's no reason for anybody to have to reinvent the wheel.
You already
did
did
a
that.
Yeah, it's already been done. It's the best thing known to man. That's why I love Google. I never do anything I can't Google and figure out. Why should I write it? Yeah, thank God for Google and Alexa. They keep us going. So we're really, I know as a group, we're pretty friendly people in spite of the fact that first year drop-in clinic, nobody wanted near us. And there's a lot of experience here. Maggie has been a professional dog trainer for a really long time. Lynn is certified now, and I've worked with her for the past year as a partner on assessments. And there's very little that throws Lynn off. She really has great instincts for dogs. I tend to be the tech person, but I quit working 15 years ago. So I'm really probably behind the time for most people, but we've tried to start moving what we have out into the digital world for sure. But we're slow because our bandwidth is pretty narrow. Yeah.
And I want to say something that I think doesn't get said often enough. When you look at your volunteers and the people that are working with your dogs regularly, you need to see those people for who they are. You see 4 dog trainers here, but what you're actually looking at is Dr. Gail Smith, who's a retired surgeon, Maggie Weingarten, who's retired assistant district attorney, Jan Peedy, who is retired systems analyst. Your volunteers are people who have been successful in life. I'm retired from resort management. And so these people that are volunteering, they're volunteering because they got where they wanted to be in life. And now they're sharing. So find out who they are. They have strengths that you need and can depend on. These are people who have done this in their lives already. And if you want to find a group of successful people, look at volunteers because that's who they are.
I think that's so well said.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And just watch Gail's handwriting is a doctor's handwriting.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. I think, Lynn, that was a beautiful way to summarize just this whole week and all of the amazing things that volunteers do across the country to help save lives. The 4 of you are a shining example and a beacon of light, and I wish we could replicate you all and plop you into shelters all over the country. So Thank you, everyone. We've got 3 more calls left. Tomorrow evening, we have Gateway Pet Guardians joining us to talk about their unicorn foster program. And I have been assured that it will be sparkly and glittery and unicorny. And then Friday and Saturday, we're focusing on cats with cat adoption team from Oregon and their Fostering for Rockstars mentor program, and 5 Acres Animal Shelter out of Missouri, and with their cat positive Jackson Galaxy clicker training program. So thank you all. Thank you, volunteers. Thank you, Top Dogs team from PACC. You're all amazing. And I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah. It was
Thank you,
good,
Sarah.
good to see you again.
Yes, thank
Bye.
you for organizing this.